Welcome, friends. And I have a question. Have you ever run into a situation in Crusader Kings 3 where you are ready to go into combat? The calculation says that you are going to win the combat and your army looks amazing, but when you actually get in there, boom, you lose.
What happened to them exactly?
And you're not sure what happened. And in today's video, we're going to start looking at what's actually going on in combat and peeking a bit underneath the hood of what's happening, why it's happening, and why you may actually lose a battle that looks like you should be winning it. All right, now that I've confirmed that my mic is unmuted for this entire recording, I already recorded this video once completely through.
So it was all for nothing.
All right, so what are we going to cover today? Today we're going to cover the overview of the phases, the damage system within the game, and your commanders and the advantages that they bring. And of course, like usual, there's timestamps within the video just in case you need to go back and re-watch something. All right, so once you go into battle, the battle's broken down into 4 different phases. There is your maneuver phase, your early battle, your late battle, and then your aftermath phase. And as you go through the 4 different phases, different things happen. So the maneuver phase is very simple. All that's happening in this phase is that your initial battle roll for your commander is occurring. Both commanders will get their initial battle rolls, and then every couple months after that, they will get a new battle roll, replacing the value from the previous battle roll. And this will be added onto your advantage score. So now we need to move into the early battle. You know, there's a couple things. This is going to be your initial back and forth attacking of the army. And there's some initial things that are going to happen here. You're going to be locked into combat. So you are not going to be able to retreat during the early battle. The other thing that's going to happen is that if your army loses or your opponent's army loses, all of your men-at-arms and all of your levies are fatal casualties. Just stop. They're done. There is no retreating. There's nothing for them. Your knights and your commander will also be removed from the battlefield, though there is still the roles of whether they get captured or not. So you may not lose them and you can re-raise them potentially. But your actual men-at-arms and your levies, they are gone. So you better have your levy reinforcement rate really high, which I know if you're like me, you just ignore it all the time.
Oh dear, that was a mistake.
Once you move into the late battle, you will be able to retreat your army. So if you start losing, rather than having an excessive amount of casualties, you can get out of the battle and retreat. Now, what's going to happen in the late battle is that you're going to be doing, each army is going to be doing damage to each other until one side runs out of toughness. This is why sometimes when you will see like 2 or 3 units and you have, say, 100 units, if those 2 or 3 units are really tough, then your 100 units might actually still lose because they cannot take on those 2 units and they can't do enough damage to them. And then the aftermath phase is where the screen and the pursuit attributes come in, when the armies are retreating and whether or not your army, the victorious army, can actually do enough damage, can do enough pursuit damage to your opponent to convert them from a routed unit to a fatal casualty. So what about damage? So one thing to be aware of is damage isn't actually straightforward in this game. 1 damage is not equivalent to 1 toughness. 1 damage does 0.03 damage to toughness. This means that 1 point of toughness is more valuable than 1 point of damage. This is very important to be aware of. Now, with the damage, I actually think it was nerfed at one point. I could have sworn that it was 0.07 at one point, but it is. I double checked in the research of the video, and it is at 0.03.
Keep making all these excuses.
What excuses?
Now, there's a simplistic tier list for what I look for and the order that I look for it in. And my S tier units are commanders. My A tier units are knights. That's why I have so many knight strategies on how to get amazing knights. Of course, some of your men-at-arms, like your elephants, can really transcend the and into the A tier. So this is just a very simplistic list. If not, If you really go after them, then the elephants can actually be as important, if not more important, than your commander. The B tier is generally your men at arms, and then your D/F tier are going to be your levies. The levies are overly expensive for what you get, and they don't bring much to the combat. Generally, if you don't need to raise them, don't raise them. Just raise your knights and your men at arms. For what they bring, they are far cheaper. When you're retreating, your pursuit isn't a straightforward system either. Your 1 point to pursuit is going to do 0.17 damage to your toughness, and 1 point to screen is going to prevent 0.33 damage from the pursuit. So you can quite easily offset your opponent's pursuit. Now, I don't really pay much attention to the system on the pursuit and the pursuit and the screen. But if you want to destroy your armies, they're not coming back, and you have a lot more time on sieges, it is very important to pay attention to the stat, because if you can demolish an army, you can really give yourself a time so they can't actually come back and take over the war target, and you can win much faster with good pursuit and screen stats. So we've talked a lot about commander advantage and advantage. So your advantage is the advantage that your armies have over your opponent, and this is going to be a scale system. So you both have your own advantage scored, and whoever has the greater score will have the greater advantage within that battle.
That is obvious, Mr. Scott.
And the advantage can really tip the tide of the battle, and that's why I put the commanders in your S tier. So what does advantage do? So 1 point of advantage is going to give you 2% increased damage to your army. So this, as you can imagine, this can quite quickly escalate a weaker army to be a more powerful one. So what actually adds or removed from your advantage? Well, you have stuff like you're defending across a river. So anytime that you're defending across a river of any size or a strait, that will give you some advantage in the combat. If the liege of the army is leading the army, this will also give you a slight bump in your advantage. If your realm is in debt, this will negatively affect your advantage. If you're gathering, so when you go and you hit that initial raise troops button, that will also negatively affect your advantage, and anyone army comes in will hit you really hard. So make sure you don't raise your army too close to your enemy's borders. And of course, if you're on low supplies, this will also cause some negative to your commander advantage. Now, one thing that you can avoid is disembarking. Just like you're crossing rivers, if you're disembarking, this will also give you a negative to your advantage. So you can take advantage of this by hitting armies that are disembarking. It's quite severe. Or if you take a look at the tooltip for the army, there's actually a countdown when you disembark to when that negative modifier is gone. For example, if you're defending in a barony you control, or if you are defending in mountains and hills, this will often give you a terrain bonus to your advantage. Now, your commanders are also going to be giving you some advantage within the advantage system. Their martial skill will be giving them advantage, and there will be different perks that they can get that will add and remove advantage within their lifestyle. Now, the martial skill is a direct one-to-one matching. So if you are looking for good commanders to get, start by sorting by martial. That's the best way to go, is just start looking at your highest martial and marry them into your court to bring them in using the standard marriage game, unless you already are blessed with some amazing commanders. So what are some general rules of thumb that I use when I'm going into combat? Well, first thing I do is at all costs, unless I have the most elite army that I can get, I don't cross rivers. I avoid it because this quite often will tip it. I need a great commander. I need awesome units, and I can take the massive increase that they will have to their damage. Another thing that I like doing is when you disembark your troops, if you actually look at the tooltip, there is a there is a countdown from 30 that will tell you exactly how long until your recently disembarked debuff goes away. So I like disembarking my units and then moving them in rather than going and directly disembarking units over top of the army. Only time I will do that is if it's an emergency or I'm so overly powered I just don't care. I'm lazy at that point. The other thing that I like doing is paying attention to my army costs and preparing ahead of time by getting a really good war chest before attacking the enemy. And another thing that you can also do is you can look at your opponents and look at not just their total soldiers, but also look at their gold level. See what their war chest is like, and if they can afford to go to battle with you, because their war chest is going to matter for two things. The first thing is, are they in debt? Are you going to get that extra 20% damage decrease on them? The other thing that this can be used for is, are they going to be able to hire mercenaries and offset your army really fast? So it's important to not only pay attention to your war chest, but theirs as well. Now, the next video we are going to do is we are going to take a look at knights, why I am addicted to them, men at arms, and levies, the different units that you can have in combat, what they bring, and how they're going to affect you in combat. But with that, I'm going to say, have yourself a good morning, good day, or good night, wherever you are.